Hey you guys, welcome back to New Day Vlogs. If you are new to my channel, my name is Nicole and I'm very happy to have you. I've noticed over the past several months that I've had quite a bit of new subscribers to my channel, and I know that I have been away for quite some time. So welcome to my channel first and foremost. I am so happy to have you as a part of my YouTube family. I'm really sorry that I've been gone for so long. I generally tried to make a couple of videos a week. Sometimes that didn't happen, other times I would. But I wanted to get on here tonight and give an explanation of where I've been, why I've been absent, and yeah, go from there. I have not been wanting to make this video. It's going to be a difficult video for me. I'm going to try not to make this video super long. I'm going to get to the point of where I've been and what has happened. I'm going to try to get through this video without crying. But the reason I've not been on my channel for the past several months is because my dad, who, if you've seen him in my previous videos, if you've watched my previous videos, my dad was a big part of my channel. He didn't actually make an appearance on all my videos, but he did make appearances in some of them, and a lot of you really enjoyed seeing him in those videos. But my dad got very sick back in March of this year, and I can't remember dates, specific dates, but he started showing signs of getting sick in March, and he passed away on August the 23rd. So he passed away about 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to try to breathe and explain to you what happened to him. This is a really hard video for me. I know I've just said that, but it's still fresh. You know, he just passed away. And so here's what happened. Back in March, my dad started getting, sorry, I've got my surveillance cameras up. My dad started getting to where he was having problems breathing. Everything kind of started out as like, he had the symptoms like of a head cold. And then the head cold kept getting worse and kept getting worse. And then eventually it kind of felt like, you know, it turned from a head cold into him having a hard time breathing, like getting out of breath really fast, having to sit down, not being able to walk without, you know, having difficulty catching his breath. So after so long of that, we ended up taking him to the doctor. I ended up taking him to the doctor. And this was at the beginning, sometime in the beginning of March. I took him to the doctor, and I explained everything that had happened, and they decided to do a chest x-ray on him. We were thinking, okay, it's probably an upper respiratory infection. They can give him some antibiotics, because after all, I mean, it was still March, it was still cold outside. You know, we just thought it was just, you know, normal stuff that was going around. Well, when the chest x-ray came back, it turned out to be fluid buildup in his left lung, and a lot of fluid buildup. And it was pretty significant. So they wanted him to go straight to the hospital and have the doctors at the hospital look at him. And so the problem was there was no fluid in his right lung. It was only prominent in the left lung. So with that, the doctor ruled out heart failure, his primary care doctor, because typical heart failure, according to this doctor, usually is present in both lungs. So we went to the hospital, and they wanted to admit him. So we stayed there for several hours in the emergency room, and they admitted him into the hospital. And I'm sorry, I've got the video cameras up and it's loud. I muted it. But anyways, they decided to do a procedure the next day after he'd been there overnight called a thoracentesis. And through that procedure, what they do is they actually pull as much fluid off of, you know, the lung as they can without hurting, you know, the person too bad. I mean, because it's got to be pretty painful, you know, to that person. But he was to the point where his lung had actually collapsed because there was so much fluid. So they ended up pulling 2 liters of fluid off of his left lung that night or that day. And it immediately helped him start breathing better. Like, it took, you know, a little bit of time, like a few hours, for his lung to expand back out to where it was, because the fluid was compressing so much on his lung. So anyways, they ran tests on the actual fluid, and, you know, the doctor had said to me that he thought that Dad could have cancer, but he needed to wait till some of the fluid results come back to make sure. There was an obstruction that they found in his on his lung. Like, I guess the hospital he was in back like the prior year when he had to go in for some testing showed that there was some sort of obstruction on the left lung, but it was so cloudy that you couldn't really tell because there was so much fluid buildup. So they didn't know for sure if it was cancer. So they ran tests on this fluid to see whether or not that he had any cancer, you know, whatnot. So we had to wait for 5 days in agony, not knowing what was happening, to get that results back. And when it came back, it showed that there was no malignancy in the fluid. So we were so excited, thinking, okay, he doesn't have cancer. But the doctor said he wanted to just give it time to see if the fluid came back. If it didn't come back, then it might have just been some sort of fluke thing that caused it to begin with. Maybe, I can't remember what he said that could have caused the fluid to begin with. But anyways, he said, you know, he wanted to give it some more time to see if more fluid did come back. And if not, then great. During that hospital stay, though, which I forgot to mention because there's so much to say, but I don't want to make this video 40 minutes long, so I'm going to try to jump as fast as I can ahead. But they did find out in that same hospital stay, when they pulled the 2 liters of fluid off, that Dad, you know, did have heart failure. Nobody knew that. I didn't know that. I wouldn't know if my mom knew that because she passed away 2.5 years ago. And so there's different stages of heart failure. If some of you don't know that, and there's stage 1 through 4. And unfortunately, my dad was in stage 4 heart failure, which nobody knew that. And we had no idea, because when they told us that the fluid was there in the lung, but that it wasn't in both lungs and it wasn't consistent with heart failure, we didn't think anything else of it. And then when we found out that he had heart failure and he only had 10 to 15% of a functioning heart, we were just devastated, you know? So the 2 major things at that time was, you've got this rapid fluid buildup in your lung, and then you've got only 10 to 15% heart failure, heart function basically. And so we were praying that the fluid didn't come back, because that amount of fluid building up not only compresses on the lungs, but when you have that much pressure and you can't breathe, it makes it pump harder so that the heart can function more efficiently. And it's kind of like it's an overdrive trying to like make it run properly. So anyways, with that being said, we gave it some time. We gave it about 3 weeks, and we watched for signs to see whether or not Dad was going to start having any breathing problems. The doctor said that he would start becoming short of breath, getting out of breath easy. Coughing was another big thing, that if he started coughing more, that was a sign that fluid could be coming back, and so forth. So we waited, and for the first 2 weeks it was fine. He was fine. But then that 3rd week came around and he started coughing, and he started getting short of breath. So we went back to the doctor, and to make a long story short, over the next several weeks, we ended up going back to the doctor an additional 3 more times, and they did 3 more thoracentesis, and each time they pulled out over 2 liters on the left lung. Once again, the right lung had been fine the entire time, but the left lung, it just kept producing more fluid. And then I found that within the next 3 times, like the first time it was 3 weeks, before fluid came back full force, but then fluid was starting to build up faster the next 3 times that he went to have all that fluid pulled out. So anyway, I don't really know how to break this down, but Dad was at my aunt's house. He stayed with her every other week, and he went to an adult daycare there because he had dementia, and he stayed with me when I was, when he was at my house, but he only went to adult daycare a couple of times a week, just to stimulate his mind and so forth. And so the nurse, the nurse at the facility, they had an on-call nurse at the facility there, and she basically had said that Dad was really short of breath, and she was very concerned. And so we ended up, when he got back to my house, because he was coming home like the next day, he was coming back to my house, I kept an eye on him the next day, like all day long, just to see how he did. And guys, I've been through so much over the past several months that I might be stuttering or kind of going back and forth with the story, and I'm terribly sorry, but it's been a lot. So I noticed when he got back the next day, as long as he was sitting down, he was completely fine. As soon as he got up, he was so weak that he had to sit back down immediately. So by the evening time, the wheezing had come back. It was getting much, much worse, and I decided I'm going to call 911. And I called 911. They came out. They did his test while he was sitting down. They did the his oxygen level and everything was in the normal range. But when he stood up, it went from like 90. I think his was normally around 96, his oxygen, which is still low, but it was not under what they were. It was not scary, like scary low or anything. But when they did his oxygen test again, when he stood up, and his blood pressure, his oxygen dropped into the 80s. I think it was like 88, and then his blood pressure also dropped into the 80s. So they decided to take him into the hospital. So he stayed one night, actually not even a night, a half a night in the hospital in our city, and then they transported him by ambulance to another city an hour away, because it's a bigger hospital with more, more doctors, different types of doctors. So anyway, when he went to that hospital, they ran so many tests on him. The cardiologist was involved, the pulmonologists were involved. And in that time frame, which by the way, he spent 6 weeks in the hospital. He was so sick. In that 6-week period, not only did we realize that his heart failure had gotten even worse than what it was. I think the first go round, he had, I think it was between 15 and 25%. I know I said 10 to 15, but when he went to the other hospital and stayed a 6-week period, his heart had actually gotten worse within the weeks at the hospital, and his ejection fraction, is what they call it, was actually at 10 to 15%. So it went from like 15 to 25% to 10 to 15%, and in a matter of weeks. And he lost his mobility in the hospital. He couldn't walk anymore. He was becoming so weak, he literally couldn't walk anymore. They were doing physical therapy with him, and in my personal opinion, I don't feel like they really pushed him to do enough physical therapy each day, but it is what it is. And then secondly, he had the fluid buildup. That was a big issue. They could not get the fluid buildup to stop, to do a procedure that they wanted to do. They had to keep waiting and waiting, and every day it would come back and they'd have to keep draining it. So that was going on, and then his blood pressure started dropping. His blood pressure started dropping into the 80s, and at one point in the hospital, his blood pressure dropped down to 60 and he flatlined. They ended up having to do electric shock therapy on him, and it brought his blood pressure up. You know, it brought him back too, and it brought his blood pressure back up to stable condition, critical but stable condition. So he ended up in the ICU for 4 days until they got that stabilized, and they finally found a medication that worked with all of his medical conditions, that helped his heart function as best as it could at a 10 to 15% heart rate. And then they, you know, it helped him to maintain his blood pressure. So we went through all that, and then we realized that his kidneys were going into kidney failure. So they ended up doing like as much as they could for him, but they ended up having to put nephrostomy tubes, which are kidney tubes, in each kidney. So at this point, he was in kidney failure, heart failure, lung fluid that was building up. Nobody understood why. And the doctors were just not, they were counting him out. They were really saying, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. But we kept praying, we kept our faith, and we kept on having confidence in him that he was going to make it. And as the weeks, you know, went on, he started showing signs of improvement, especially after they did the nephrostomy tubes. The nephrostomy tubes helped him get out of kidney failure, and everything started, you know, kind of going uphill instead of going downhill. So we were very happy about that, and they felt confident after 6 weeks of being in the hospital that he was going to be able to not go home, because he was, first of all, he couldn't walk anymore because they didn't do enough physical therapy with him and he lost his mobility. But so he needed to go to a rehabilitation place just to kind of get his muscles built back up from being in the bed for 6 weeks. So we picked a like excellent rated 5-star nursing home. It was a rehabilitation and skilled nursing home, and he went there for rehabilitation. However, in that time frame, he, I think, honestly gave up on life. Like, he was not happy with being so sick, and he did the exercises there for a while, but his body was just tired. He used to tell me all the time, I'm tired. I'm just really tired. And I thought he meant sleepy, but he said, no, my body is tired and I'm tired of being sick. So he told me, he said, I'm not going to do physical therapy anymore. I'm just not. I don't want to, and I'm not going to. And so he stopped. And when he stopped, then everything started going downhill worse. Not because he didn't have the ability to walk, but because he was starting to give up on life. Not only did he stop exercising and, you know, then completely lost all of his mobility, but he also, we noticed a pattern that he wasn't eating as much as he used to. He started getting worse on his eating, and his dementia, you know, at that time was a little bit worse. So I'm trying to cut this down, this very long, very painful story down shorter, because I know this video is getting longer. But anyway, when he stopped exercising, he lost mobility. His eating started getting less and less, and we started knowing a rapid weight loss. He ended up being in this nursing facility. He ended up having to transfer to long-term because when he stopped doing the rehabilitation, his insurance stopped paying, and he ended up having to go to the long-term care because at that point he couldn't stand up anymore without 2 to 3 people assisting him. And so he went to the long-term care, and that's not what we wanted. We wanted him to come home, and we begged him, we pleaded, and we tried so hard to get him to want to come home, and he wanted to come home, but we were not able to get him to a point where he was capable or able to come home because his conditions just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So we found out that the eating was becoming one of the major issues after he was there, and he was only in the nursing facility for 2.5 months. So keep that in mind while I'm going through all of this. So the first month, I guess within like 2 weeks in, he stopped doing exercising, and he started losing weight within the first month. I'm sorry, my phone's going off, so excuse the background's ringing. He ended up losing, my dad got to where he couldn't swallow his food. He couldn't chew up his food good. We went from solid foods down to grounds mechanical. And what that is where they just grind up the food very small to where you can swallow it easier. And we weren't sure why he was having a hard time swallowing. The nurse there did tell me that part of that could have just been from the dementia, because sometimes dementia patients, as the disease keeps, getting worse and progressively worse, they forget over time how to swallow. But I didn't feel like my dad's dementia at that time was to the point where he forgot how to swallow. I noticed in that time frame that he was never hungry. And my dad was, when he was healthy, he was a big man. And I'm not saying fat. He was a big bones, healthy man, 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. I mean, he ate his vegetables. He loved food. So when we started noticing that, he was not hungry, he was full all the time, and he hadn't hardly eaten anything throughout the day, we knew that things were not going to look up anymore. He rapidly lost weight, and he went, I think when he was in the hospital, he went into the hospital weighing 198 pounds. He came out of the hospital weighing 165 pounds. And within 2 months, I guess, because he was in there 2.5 months, he got down to like 130 pounds. His body was literally starving to death. We went from, like I said, mechanical, or like solid food, to mechanical grounds, to pureed, to him not even being able to hardly eat the pureed food. And so when they put him on pureed food, which is just basically liquefying everything, we noticed that his weight started dropping even more, which we were like, well, how is this possible? He's taking protein supplement, Ensure top drinks, he's drinking, food, but yet he keeps losing weight. So when we went to the hospital, he had to go back to the hospital to have his nephrostomy, his kidney tubes changed out, and they had to be changed out like every couple of months. When we went back to have them taken out and replaced, the doctor went ahead, because he had another large amount of fluid buildup, previously. They decided, let's do another chest x-ray while, he's here at the hospital. And when they did that, I'm sorry, they actually did a CT scan. It wasn't a chest x-ray. They did a CT scan. When they did that CT scan, they found out that the obstruction that I was telling you about earlier actually was most likely cancer, because that obstruction not only had gotten bigger from the previous doctor's notes, from, it showed in one size, this doctor had showed on the CT scans that it was much bigger and that it had spread. So basically he diagnosed my dad with lung cancer. I'm on the verge of tears, so I'm kind of having to take a pause. So my dad is at this point at 130 pounds, and now we understood why. Because the doctor had said that lung cancer, probably any type of cancer, but lung cancer makes it difficult to eat or be able to keep weight on. And so he was about 130 pounds, and he had now lung cancer, and it was stage 4. And then on top of that, he thought it was stage 4. I'll be honest, in order to know for 100% certainty that it was cancer, they would have had to do a needle biopsy and go in and take a piece and send it off. The problem was where the tumor was inside of that one particular lung. It was in a spot that if he would have went in there, it could have collapsed his lung and it could have done more damage than good. And really, you know, him looking at it, he was with 100% certainty it was lung cancer. And he wanted to know if we wanted to do a needle biopsy, and I told him no, because honestly, a man that is that sick, any person that's that sick, would not be able, they would not be a candidate to even have chemo or radiation or any type of treatments for that type of cancer or any type of cancer. So my dad ended up having stage 4 lung cancer, stage 4 heart failure, kidney disease, and he had pulmonary embolisms. You know, he was getting blood clots frequently. I didn't mention that, but he kept having blood clots. And then he had lung fluid in the lungs, and that kept rapidly building up. So he fought a long, hard battle, and we made sure to tell him that we loved him. I'm sorry. I said I wasn't gonna cry, but I can't help it. We told him that we loved him. We spent time with him, as much time as we could, because when he got sick, he got to the point where all he wanted to do was sleep. So we opted for comfort care. He'd never wanted to be on, you know, any type of machines. He didn't want to have a feeding tube, anything like that. We respected his wishes. And on August the 23rd, I went to visit him. I was on my way down to my aunt's house because I've been working on a paint project. And I stopped by to see him, and he seemed to be himself. I mean, he was still very sick, but he seemed to be doing okay that day. And I fed him. I gave him his Ensure and fed him. And I told him I loved him. And then I got the call that evening from the nurse that his vitals were dropping. There was no sign that morning that I would have ever suspected that he was going to be gone that night. I rushed back across town. I was about 45 minutes away. And I rushed to home, or not home, I rushed back to the nursing home. And he was in a coma when I got there. And when they took his vitals, I'm sorry, you guys. His oxygen had dropped down to 60, and his blood pressure was 60s, in the 60s, and he passed away 2 hours later. And I don't really know. I guess God calls you home. He knows when it's time. And they had put him on, he was in a lot of pain earlier in the evening before I got the phone call that his vitals were dropping. And they basically had said that they asked him if he was in pain, and he had said yes, that he was in a lot of pain. So they gave him some pain medication. It wasn't morphine, but it was some kind of like a Tramadol medication, which is kind of like morphine, I guess. And that made him not have to like he was having a hard time breathing. They think that his lungs were filling up and he was drowning in his own fluid. And so that kind of calmed the fight, you know, to catch his breath. But in that time frame, he was filling up with fluid. The nurse could hear it in his lungs. I'm sorry. So I
stayed with him. I stayed with him and I held his hand. And I know he could hear me because hearing is the last thing to go. When someone is dying, they still can hear you even if they're in a coma. And I just talked to him and I reminisced about old times, and I told him how much I loved him and how I was so sad that he was leaving, but I didn't want him to be in pain. And I just held his hand. And he died 2 hours later. I got there at like 9 o'clock. And he died at 11:02 p.m. on August the 23rd. So anyway, our whole world just crashed to the ground. I'm going to compose myself here in a minute. Let me go and compose myself and I'll be back in just a second. I'm kind of composed. I promised I wouldn't cry, but guys, it's just, there's no way of getting around it. this is why I've dreaded this video, and I'm sorry that I probably cast a lot of sadness on you guys, but I've wanted to make this video for several weeks since he passed away. I just couldn't bring myself to talk about it. He just got so sick so fast. It was without warning. And I've never seen, like, he just declined so fast. There was like no stopping it. I fought so hard. I mean, you guys, I fought so hard in every way that I could to try to make him better. If there was a way to like do something like with a procedure or anything, not to put him through torture or pain, then I would do that. I would make sure that he was taken care of. But I will say this, no matter how much you try, when it's God's timing and he's ready to take you home, you're going. Whether you want it, whether you're ready or not, you're going, and there's nothing that can stop it. And so I guess right now, as Dad used to say, when my mom passed away, he used to say, I guess God needed her more than we did. So I guess that's what I have to sit there and say. I guess that's what I have to say now about my dad, you know, that I guess God needed him more than I did. But anyway, there's not much of us family left. Like, I've lost almost everybody in my immediate family. We've got extended family, but my immediate family is all gone except for one aunt, and that's it. They've all passed away. So it's been hard, you know. We just moved to this new house in October of last year, and we moved. One of the main reasons I moved and sold my old house was because we had my mom had passed away and my brother had passed away, and I called my uncle my brother because I'm legally adopted by my grandparents. So the sadness of being in that house for so many years, sharing such wonderful memories with all of our loved ones, and then not having them there anymore was too hard. It was hard being at that old house. So I ended up deciding I wanted to move, and I wanted to move to the country. My dad loved the country, and we love the country. And I wanted to have a bigger place for him to walk around and just, you know, be in nature and you know, see deer in your backyard and birds. And we didn't have a lot of that because we lived in the city limits. We're at our old house. But to make a long story short, I thought it was a new adventure, a new start. And then we get here, and he got through the winter, and then he got really sick at the beginning of spring. And so he didn't get to enjoy any type of time really during the warm weather in this house. He was sick from the beginning of spring on, and then he passed away. So it's really, really sad. You know, I'm heartbroken. But anyway, I haven't made this video because it's been hard to talk about. And I know it's 3 weeks in now that he's been gone, which is just unbelievable. And it's been a really hard 3 weeks. But it was really hard before the 3 weeks before he passed to see him suffering like that. I would not want him back like that ever again. I would wish my dad would be back, you know, like he was before he ever got sick. But I would never want him back in that condition. I'm glad he's not suffering, but I am heartbroken he's gone. So I've been doing some healing, trying to heal over the past few weeks, and over the past several months before that, you know, we've just been trying to deal with the sickness and you know, just get through it. But I wanted to get on here and give you an update that my dad has passed away, and we had his funeral. His funeral was on the 29th of August, and it was beautiful, and I will say that he looked so at peace, you know, when we saw him, you know, the last time. He just looked like he was very much at peace, and he was a very big believer in Christ, and so he was a Christian, so he definitely went to heaven. But anyways, I've taken a few weeks after that just to, or I should say a couple of weeks, just to kind of pull myself together, and wanted to get on here and just give you the update of what has happened. And I will be back filming. This video was kind of a intro kind of into me getting back into filming again. One of the main reasons I haven't filmed is I knew that this was the video that needed to explain where I've been. I needed to explain myself and give you an idea of why I've been absent for so long before I start making more videos. I wanted you to know what has happened. So anyway, I'm starting back to filming now, and I think this is going to be, you know, I've missed you guys very, very much, and this is going to give me some relief from all the grief that I have been going through, and that I probably will still be going through for quite a while. So this is kind of like an escape from the sadness. And I enjoy it. I enjoy, you know, sharing my life with you guys. I just, you know, during the hard time like that over the past several months, it's just, I needed to step aside to spend time with him and to figure things out. And now I'm back, and I'm so sad that he's not going to be able to make a presence in any of my videos again. I'm just sad he's not going to be here to join me on videos anymore, and you guys see him and all the wonderful things that he used to do, like wave to the camera or say hello or give you that cute little smile. So it's going to be different. It's going to be sad. And he didn't make that many appearances on the actual video footage, but I'm glad that I captured the video footage that I did of him. And I'm glad that you guys got to know him, you know, the ones that have, you know, watched those previous videos. I'm very fortunate that I have that video footage of him. So anyways, my loves, I'm going to go ahead and leave you tonight and ask you for prayers for our family, and prayers for the days, months, weeks, hours, minutes ahead through this very difficult time ahead for us. It's going to take time to heal, but I know we'll see him again one day, and he's not suffering, and now I believe truly he's up in heaven, and he's young and he's healthy again, and I'm sure that he's smiling down on every single one of us. But if you don't mind to say a prayer for us, we would greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and leave you with some pictures of Dad one last time, and I'm not going to put any pictures of when he got sick in there. I don't feel like that would be honoring him in any way. That was when he was sick. I'm going to show you how he was. And I will see you guys back in the next video. I've got a couple more videos in mind that I wanted to show you. I've got a haul that I wanted to do, a fall haul for all of the fall decor that I have purchased. And then I'm going to do a fall house tour. I still haven't got around to you guys to showing you the video of what our kitchen looks like, because I think we were in the process of renovating. I can't remember the only thing we haven't done on it is we haven't finished the backsplash. We've got to install that, but everything else is pretty much done. And I am still painting. I put everything aside for quite a while now. I need to finish painting the kitchen, but the living room is finally finished. So I'll show you as is on the next video, just so you can get an idea and show you what my plans are for the backsplash and everything. But anyway, I'm going to leave you with some pictures of Dad, and thank you so much for sticking around even with my absence over the past several months. And I just appreciate all of the new subscribers joining my channel. I love every single one of you, and I will see you back soon in the next video. You guys take care. Bye.